zu unserem nächsten spannenden Thema. Es geht wieder um Plattformen und ich begrüße ganz herzlich Madhu Nutaki, Chief Technology Officer der Zurose Group. Und es geht why platforms and how can they serve better the patients. Hi Madhu.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, I can hear you, I can see you. That's perfect. Very excited. And also excited to hear your keynote. So I hand over to you.
Perfect. And let me share the screen also, that way you can see it. Let me know when you can see.
Looks like it's working.
Excellent. Cool. So let's get started then. I know we have limited time today. The theme today is platforms and how can they serve patients better. A quick introduction about me. I have a background in computer science. Home is California. Done healthcare at Kaiser Permanente, one of the largest healthcare groups in USA. And more recently, I'm part of the CTO for the Zurose Group based out of Zurich. A little bit of history about Zurose. We started in 1993. With the 2004, we had a market entry in Germany. We did the acquisition for Doc Morris in 2012. And today we have 5 different online pharmacies in Germany. Went IPO in 2017, and since then we're becoming much more of a pan-European company with Spain, Portugal, Swiss, and so much more. I'll start with a brief healthcare transformation journey from kind of what I learned from the US, and then I will go deeper into how is this relevant for Germany and what can we share, and how our platforms are much more useful today than they were several years ago. So if you look at the distribution of population in the US, this is one of the only countries where digital is quite predominant, irrespective of the gender, but also irrespective of the age that the demographics you have. Germany has a little bit more on the lower side of this funnel, whereas US is a little bit more proportionally oriented. In terms of healthcare spending, it's quite large, as you know. 17.7% of the GDP goes towards healthcare, and a majority of it, 9.7%, goes for prescription drugs and so on and so forth. Whereas the per capita, I think between US, Germany, Switzerland, most of them are kind of in the same range in terms of healthcare spend, which is a good metric for us to use as we look at what is the role of platforms in helping with this spend. And how do we make sure that that is more effectively used going forward? In terms of the chronic conditions in the US, 80% of the adults have at least one chronic condition, and 68% of them have 2 or more. And you can see the top ones on the right side with hypertension, cholesterol, and so on and so forth, that are predominant in the marketplace. Over the last year and a half, very similar to the European markets, funding from the venture capitalists has been predominantly in a couple of areas. One is around the well-being and the care side, and second is around data and platforms, which is the part of the topic for today. And it's been seeing quite a steep growth, as you can tell from here. And again, when I look at the European segments, it's quite similar in terms of the hockey stick, the steepness of the curve from a funding standpoint here. What are the top apps that are used within the US market? It is primarily focused around the electronic medical record, pharmacy refill management, appointment booking, lab results, communication, and wellness alerts. I think these top 5 or 6 things within each platform are predominant when it comes to the consumer side of the world and what they rely on mostly. When we look at kind of from the Doc Morris side, how is platforms relevant? We look at it from kind of from the consumer standpoint. Pretty much everybody is already in the next internet, so there's not that much that is different that they expect from healthcare as they expect from watching a Netflix or booking a hotel or an experience on Kayak or Uber and so on and so forth. So for us as a healthcare industry, our role is to make sure that we can at least meet our customer expectations when it comes to customer experience, when it comes to data using these platforms. So we are looking at it from these 5 angles. One is the foundation. Second is what are the apps and the applications. Third is where does AI and science fit in? Fourth is around transformation. And then underlying all of this is around the governance, the people, and the platforms. These are the guiding principles that I've used here at the Zorose Group. And I'm sure most of these are quite familiar with the audience. You probably have many of these within your own teams. One of them that is I'm quite sensitive towards, which we're putting a lot of attention to, is this concept of a wow experience with a digital first approach. Again, this is where the customers expect us to perform very well. And I think we in the healthcare industry have a lot of runway to get to meeting our customer expectations in this particular space. We have three focus areas when it comes to platforms. One is accelerating growth when it comes to OTC and BPC. Second is around piggybacking on the ERX side. And third is around digital health management. And for me, I think the more mature markets, more mature products we have is on number 1 and 2. And I think we, as a German supplier of software and a customer experience company, we still have ways to go when it comes to the third one, which is around digital health management, both on the consumer side, but also on the software and the vendor side. I think one of the key aspects that we need to solve for is around too much data. Again, both on the consumer side with so much available, but also on the doctor side with so many applications that we are asking them to integrate with. But also on the regulatory side, I think this is a key area for us to focus on when it comes to platforms. And I think if we put the consumer at the middle of it, we need to make sure that we can allow them to make sense of it all and do it in a way that allows them to make choices in a much more smarter way. We look at it from a digital front door standpoint. So for us, there is a single digital front door when it comes to a consumer, and we wrap a number of services around that digital front door. Mobile first, obviously, but behind it is a very mature e-commerce platform, a very mature ERX platform, a very mature identity and loyalty programs, and a very mature distribution model where we can ship goods, either OTC, BPC, or ERX, with a number of choices, same day, next day, 2 days from now, and so on and so forth. So for us, the platform vision is built around this concept of a digital front door, and then we integrate all of it behind this particular single platform. When it comes to the European side, we are quite bullish on this topic. Obviously, this sector is going through a lot of change much more recently over the last year, 2 years. And with the foundation that we have from an ERX standpoint, I think digitalizing health services is something that is a key task, both for the current administration, but also the one that is here or coming very soon. I think it is an area for us to be competitive when it comes to the US or the Chinese markets, and the European Union can become much more competitive in this particular space. But for us to be able to do this, we need to be having a very innovation-friendly regulatory framework, both at the national level and the EU level. And we as DocMorris are going to behind this quite actively. And we're looking for partnerships and collaboration with a number of folks on this call that we can kind of have a unified front on how we solve this problem of innovation, but within the limitations and the constraints and the regulatory environments that we have within the EU. And then finally, I think ERX and EPA are key foundation elements for us when it comes to not only the German consumer, but also the pan-European consumer. And this is, again, an area where we can have a much more collaborative network between the teams on Bitkom. That's something that Bitkom can also facilitate going forward. So for us, I think the patients and the doctors have shown enough willingness and are ready to move towards ERX. Obviously, Germany has the highest penetration across the European markets that we can capitalize on. Gematik provides a very good framework for us to integrate, but much more can be done in this space. Again, if we join forces together, I think we can become much more effective. Again, Bitkom has a very important role to play here to bring us together, but also to make the collaboration much more actionable and activated in a much more radical way. I think data is a superpower that we all agree. I think the trick is to figure out a way to use it to the advantage of our consumers, but also use it to make the consumer journey much more explicit and useful. And I think we can, as we kind of navigate into the digital journey, I think a couple of these things are quite useful for us to be sensitive towards, is that a satisfied customer is obviously very important, but an unsatisfied customer in the digital world has a much more impact than in the physical world. And as we think about digital and mobile apps and platforms, I think we have to work on emotions that our customers feel so that it becomes much more habitual for them to use healthcare apps. So today, the usage of healthcare apps in the European market is in the very nascent stages. And I think we all have a responsibility and accountability here to improve that relationship with our consumers, to make it much more sticky, to make it much more consumer-oriented and much more useful. So with this, I'll pause. And then if there are any questions, I can certainly answer in the last 4 to 5 minutes that we have.
Madhu, that was very inspiring. And I stumbled over one sentence in your presentation saying, making digital health a habit through e-commerce. And I find it super interesting, since you come from the US, now you look at the European market, you look at the German market, and I'm pretty sure you couldn't follow the German discussion earlier, but we were talking a lot about really the needs of patients and how to serve them. And this is something that is really an integral part of your strategy. What can we learn in Germany from this, approach, this mindset?
Yeah, a very good question. And I think, yes, this takes time for consumers to also get used to, right? And I think the more we can figure out what are the hooks that we can have, where they can engage with digital, the better off we are. So as an example, pharmacy refill management is something that I think we all think that there is value, which if we can do it well, the consumers will value it much more. And that creates that relationship with the brand, irrespective of which brand it is. Hopefully it is Doc Morris, but it could be anybody else. Similarly, I think the more we can allow them to be partners in this health journey, I think the better off we are. So I think these are the 5 or 6 usually the top used services when it comes to digital in the US market. And I also worked in the Chinese market, and it is very similar.
But if I understand you right, the strategy is really a consumer strategy. It's focusing on users as consumers, and not that much like on the political interaction between all the stakeholders in the system, but purely on the needs and desires. So that's what I really understood is the message of your keynote today. You summarized it so much more better than I did. Thank you. No, I'm just thinking. So if you would like to share maybe your key recommendations, how to set up an organization to become very consumer-oriented in order to create, these use cases that people really desire. Yeah, it's a good question. And I think this is probably one slide that I would share, is take a step back and look at it from a consumer standpoint. And I think the top first 3 here, like know me, engage me, and empower me, are written very much in a consumer-oriented language. And I think the reason why I want to put these at the top is if we do those 3 things very well, I think the rest will easily follow. So for me, I think the more we can create products that are consumer-friendly, have a very consumer-oriented mindset, even for the technical teams, the better off we are. So within the Zorro as a group, we are reorganized to align a product team and a technical team with a business owner as a kind of 3 parts of a triangle. So the business owner owns the P&L, the product owner owns the roadmap, the technical lead owns the technical implementation, and the 3 roles together kind of are accountable for the consumer. So that model seems to work reasonably well. But again, the guiding principles allow us to make that triangle work very effectively. Yeah. Thank you so much. I think this is very insightful, especially as we talked a lot about collaboration between industry partners and science and politics. But we also talk about collaboration within the company in order to really create good products. So thank you very much, Madhu, also for your very inspiring insights and for being so transparent, sharing your vision with us.